doesn't find it.
The Braj doesn't have Maryada. It doesn't have the flavor. It has the flavor of Madhurya. So that sweetness that's there. But it's not that our practice is not that we're not following the rules. Because what are the rules? As we said, it's the rules of what the practice that they do in Vrindavan. We're not given the practices they do in Vaikuntha. We're given the practices they do in Vrindavan. So it has that flavor. But Vaikuntha expands from Vrindavan, so following the practice in the form of rules, of Vrindavan in Vaikuntha works for them. Because it's an expansion, but the thing is it takes on the flavor of majesty. Well, for us, we may be following sadhana bhakti, we may be worshipping in that way, but it's not that flavor. So that's why flavor is very important. Because sometimes we may take from other sampradayas some of their practices, but if we take the flavor along with it, it won't match.
Because many devotees are very much allured, by the Shri Vaishnavas, how they worship the Madhavas.
They're awed by their worship simply because they don't know our worship. Because the point is in reality, in fact, when it comes to the rituals and that we do, the Shris are awed by what we do, in reality. At the installation of the Bangalore temple, right? There's a big installation. And they would, they had money. In those days, that's quite a long time ago. They were spending, I think, 1 lakh a day on construction, or 5 lakhs a day on construction. So you can understand how much money they were making, because it was consistent. They just went through. They never stopped. Once they started, it just went till it was finished, so very quick, right? And so then all the devotees there were all graduates from IIT. Right? And most of them from the Bombay one. Right? So, smart guys. Qualified. So, they had 2 aspects of the program. One is because it's right, in the heart of South India, so therefore they invited all the Shris to do their thing. But they had us come and do our thing. Right? Does that make sense? Yes. So, and who's there? These are all, main pujaris and that from Melkote, from Sri Rangam, from all these other major temples. Because it's big, they're not going to have just the small timers there. And if you're spending 5 lakhs a day on this, you don't mind. Their Yagshala, the Shri's Yagshala cost 5 lakhs. Right? Like that. Ours didn't, but theirs did. And so, at one point they're there and seeing everything, and so then they asked, so you guys, what is your worship? What is your system? Because they have theirs. And so then one of the vice president that was in charge of overseeing the installation and all that, then he gave them the Gautamiya Tantra, right? Which is the main work that we get so much of our stuff from. All our prayers and that. So he went through the book, or they went through the book. They handed back the book, offered pranams and says, this is over our head. Because what we have to understand is the Shri's worship is extremely simple. But they repeat it again and again and again and again. Therefore, it looks complicated. But their worship is actually very, very simple. You know what I'm saying? That's the whole thing. There's a lot of repetition. While we don't repeat, but our rituals are so much more complicated. Right? They'll install something, ihavaha iatishta, you're done. That's the Shris. We ihavaya tishti sani dehi sani rudasva samakopava sakri kuru, chant the mantras and then do the vinyasas, like this, and then, but that's just like, to them that just blows their mind. Because I've watched, I remember Subramanya, right? Subramanyam is a temple of the 8 mats, Pejwar. It's a subsidiary of Pejwar Mat. Because there's 22 mats, but the 8 main, the other ones all fall under those, like that. was there somehow or another for Nishinga Chaturdasi. And he, the Acharya, is doing the puja and that, because there's just him and a couple other brahmacharis, and that was it. And I sat there an hour and a half doing that special bathing and pujing for Nishinga Day. And basically just did the same things over and over and over and over again. But what he did was actually very simple. You understand? So we're used to that they're so much more elaborate. No, they're not. We're as elaborate and more, but ours, because of the subtlety of it, it's not easy to catch. The Shri's is more easy because it just has that point of majesty. Well, ours is chosen because it fits in more with sweetness. You understand? Mother Jashoda and the gopis, they're doing all these nyasas and kara nyasa, anga nyasa, because we don't generally do them, because then within that, then you have all your chanting the mantras on your fingers, like that, and then putting them on the body. So we don't do that. You understand? Because that's something for Vaikuntha. So other than just taking out a few things, then we follow all those pancharatric elements. Right? The Shris, Hari Bhakti Vilas is mentioning Ahirbudnyaya, Haya Shirsha, and all these kind of pancharatras. They have temples that do that historically, from the time of Ramanuja. But any new temple they install now, it's always Padma, because it's so much simpler. Does that make sense? So does that make sense? So, and they've been doing it for 1,000 years, so therefore then they work out what they do. But if you see, it's very much up to the individual pujari how it looks. One pujari sets up and they have this little festival in a mandap, and it's fabulous. How beautiful it is and how refined. And others set it up, even though that they may be technically better. It's not very nice at all. So it still is about the individual and how much they see the aesthetics and doing it, or how much they're just by the rules. Because the rules make it very boring. It's only the individual that has that flair, then they can make it look very beautiful. And that's not very many. It's just like chanting. How many tapes are there of Vedic chanting by pundits in the South? Right? You can count them on one hand. Why? Because those are the only ones that can chant, and it sounds nice. Literally. I'm not joking. There's a few of them, Sri Ranga, a few of them in Tirupati, a few of them in Melkote. The Smartas have a couple. That's it. Everybody else, it sounds out of key. You know what I'm saying? So that's the whole point, is that if we understand what we're doing and all that, then it has everything that they have, but it has the sweetness, flavor that works with Braj. So we can do all the things that they do, but it has a different flavor. It's just a matter of how much we can do. It's just like we were doing the Mahayagya in the morning on Wednesdays. It's starting, I think, last year, or maybe the year before. We adjusted it so the whole thing would finish in an hour. Because we found anybody who came, the guests and that, they can't handle more than that. We do programs outside, we won't do more than 45 minutes as a big program. Generally we do 20 minutes, half an hour. But we cut it back because they can't handle. So what you see one week and what you see the next week, that used to be what we do every week. Because people can't handle it, so they're saying about the Sri, but they can't handle that anyway. It just sounds like, oh, they do everything so pukka, but that's because they're doing the tradition. When we do the tradition, then in what way is it any different or less? It's just that nobody does, so we look at them and say, oh, they're great, but if we do our own tradition, then why do we have to look at them? Does that make sense? So that's the whole point, it's Lord Chaitanya's mission. So Lord Chaitanya gave all these other four acharyas what aspect of the philosophy of Chinta Beta Beta Tattva they'll present. And how like that. And so then doing that, and then they establish their sampradaya. And they're successful. And then when Lord Chaitanya comes, he takes back two things from each of the sampradaya and puts it together. So that means it's, that's like saying, oh, Vasudeva, is there, but Sankarshan has, I say Sankarshan has, Jnana and Bala, and Pradyumna has, Aishwarya and Virya, and Aniruddha has Tejas and Shakti, wow, like that. But what they're missing is Vasudeva has all 6 of those. You know what I'm saying? But if you only have those 2, you can identify it. So, because it's only Vishishta Dvaita, you can identify it. Vishuddha Dvaita, you can identify it. Like that. You understand? Dvaita, you can see it. But Achinta Veda Veda Tattva, that's then in a realm beyond. So it's actually, you have to apply yourself very nicely, and by the Lord's grace. So that's the point, is when you're given something higher, it does have that subtlety that the others don't have. Does that make sense?
In this example with the Shris doing the installation of this Bangalore temple, was it because of the mood of majesty that they made this Yagyashala for 5 lakhs?
What does that got to do with the conversation?
No.
Yeah, so in other words, stick to the topic. That was just an example. My point is they do very big stuff. We can do the same stuff simply, but but it's more complex. So the point is the Braj Leelas are more complex than the Vaikuntha Leelas, but seemingly less opulent. Though actually they're more opulent. Does that make sense?
Again, I think it's for Niruddha.
Tejas and Shakti.
You were invited there, and the people were invited there for the installations thing.
Yeah.
What was gained by inviting the Shris when you were there?
No, it means that it's like what Prabhupada did in Vrindavan. He invited the locals, because then people who are local then think, okay, everything's very proper. But because we're there, then we know it's proper. So they did all their things, and we did all our things. So they focused more on the kalashas and this and that, on the top of the temple. We didn't go up there. So any of the chakra installation flags, the pot, all these things, they did all that. And we did all the things that directly dealt with the deity. And so they did all their things, and then after the Abhishek and everything that we had done, then they came and they sprinkled, their water and all that from the yagyas. So that's their pran pratishtha. They don't chant mantras or anything. That's it. They just take the water, sprinkle it on the deity, Haribol. While we sit there and chant mantras and do all kinds of stuff. So it's just more. They just requested, we've done all this, don't, get rid of that. So they wanted it done at a point that it wouldn't be, they've done it and then we remove it and then start again. So therefore it had to be after, we've done the Sri Sri Samhara and Nyasas and all those kind of things. Right? So they wanted to go, we're doing all this work. So the whole point is that then the locals will think it's there. But the devotees then, they're happy because we're going to carry on and do everything like that.
It was a one-day program, installation program.
No, it was 3 days.
Same thing was ISKCON Tirupati. It was a 3-day program, and therefore all the ISKCON devotees were very much impressed, saying that because the Shris had come to do the installation, it was elaborate. So all the saying it's not good on a Varishiti kind of an event which took place.
So the point is that these are the Brahminical activities. You do them, they're nice, but we have the same thing in our own flavor. So the point is that they do it, then we'll say, oh, this is very nice. We do it, oh, this is not Treta Yuga, it's not the age of Yagyas and all this karma kanda. So that's the whole point, is it's just, we have a tendency to appreciate, what do you call it, others, not ourselves. So that's the point. It's not understood what we've been given.
Like yesterday you mentioned that some Mataji asked that Mataji said that Mahaprabhu left Bengal and went south, and you made the point that because in your own land you're not appreciated, so you're in your own organization and you need to get somebody from.
No, that's naturally there. But the whole point is one has to be careful because the flavor is different. You want to go
Yes.
to Vaikuntha, hey, there's a whole sampradaya there. You know, like that. Means if you want to get anywhere but Braj, anywhere from Vaikuntha up to lower Goloka, then the four sampradayas are quite qualified, quite competent to take you there. But if you want Braj, then this is the place. Like that. The others, they won't take you there. You know, because they're giving you a part of a Chinta Bheda Veda Tattva. And if the part works so good, then how will the whole work?
This is in 2005 I went to Sri Lanka the only time, and there was this very, very elaborate worship going on, and but after some time then the head priest, he came out and led our Harinam, and that sweetness there. They started with Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, and then Hare Krishna.
Yeah, because that's how it's mentioned in the Veda.
It was just that sweetness, like when you go out and like that, it must have such an influence on the whole India.
Yes,
preaching.
Yes, it does. And that head priest he very much appreciates this one. Because you have to remember is that head priest, forefather is, Gopal Bhatta Goswami.
Yes. Actually, he told in one of the classes when Radhanath Maharaj took Yatra, so Namalwar, he has written that after so many years, like after Mahaprabhu's movement, so the devotees will come over here in 5,000 like that something, and will chant the holy names of Lord.
Yes. Means the scholars in the line know how to, they appreciate what's going on. Priests may or may not, but the scholars, they don't. It's like that in any line. Scholars are always in a different category because they know philosophy. Right? They have the culture and the philosophy, so it's a bit more balanced. While priests, if they have philosophy, it's good, it's balanced, but if not, they may have just the sentiment because they have the practice, but not the philosophy. So anybody with the philosophy, then they know what's going on. They know it's happening.
I went to Melkote with Atul in the beginning of the year, and then in the noon arti or whatever, they were chanting. I don't know which mantra, but Atul was able to, keep up without missing a beat. And after that, we were very appreciative. How's it possible with this young Western?
No, that's there. We have another devotee there, Sachi Pran.
Yeah, we met.
Yeah. So he would go there and chant the mantras, and they would go, you chant so nicely. Where did you learn? When he mentioned the Gurukul here, they wouldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And so, they respect him because he can do and knows what they know. Yeah. So that's a few of these places. They're sharp. They catch these. So that's the whole point is that we're taking it that, we become bewildered that, they're so much better. But in actuality, they respect what we have. So if we just apply ourselves to what we have, then naturally, time it will become very nice. Is that just because Krishna's there. It's just like dressing deities. You don't see any sampradaya, anybody dress deities the way they do. And this style was, there since the 70s, 80s. Like that. So it's not like it's a new thing. So it's just we have to follow what's there. And if we continue, then it just gets better and better. Is that so like that. Okay, so are we good on the issues? Yes. Okay. So page 53. Lord Sri Krishna replied, "My dear mother, I have never eaten dirt. All my friends complaining against me are liars. If you think they are being truthful, you can directly look into my mouth and examine it." Right? So then it's the thing, well, if you think that they're So it's just all play. It's just all the aspect of rasa. No, they're all lying, even though he did eat them, right? And then, if you think, then you can look in my mouth, because when you surrender like that, then there may be a chance that, oh, okay, no, it's okay, whatever. So she looks, but he wants her to look, so it's part of the pastime. Srila Prabhupada comments: Krishna presented himself as an innocent child to increase the transcendental ecstasy of maternal affection. Right? That's the whole purpose. You take these extremes. It's all about the balance between the extremes. So the whole point is extremity can be used as long as the other one is used along with it. And they balance nicely. And they're not used too much. If you take one extremity too far, then even you take the other one, it doesn't match. Does that make sense? Because then, it has to balance it. Like I remember once, So the whole idea is that Krishna perfectly balances it. The devotees perfectly balance it. How much they're complaining about Krishna, and all that is then how much they're talking about how when he smiles and all that, they can't do anything. You understand? But if it's just complaining and just leaving it at that, then, it just has that rasa. But when it goes back and forth, it oscillates. That's where the taste is. That's why these seeming negative things, they're the impetus for the taste in the positive, and the positive or the taste in the negative. Because if it's only one, it gets boring. Right? Someone who's always grumpy is boring. Someone who's always happy, always, then there's a limit. So someone who can deal on both sides, right? That's appreciated. As described in the Shastra, Karana Bhayan Mit Yoktir Vatsalya Rasa Ho Shika. This means that sometimes the small child speaks lies. For example, he may have stolen something or eaten something and yet deny that he has done so. We ordinarily see this in the material world, but in relation to Krishna it is different. Such activities are meant to endow the devotee with transcendental ecstasy. It brings out the ecstasy in there, because it's only being done for that, right? Why is it being done in the material world? It's being done, to get some material benefit or to protect oneself. So it doesn't actually it's not about the relationship, but the form of it still will be there. We have to remember is that the living entity wants to take advantage of Krishna's energies. The energies still work the same way. Whether they're in the spiritual world or the material world, they work the same way. They may be of inferior quality. Just like you have superior quality cars and inferior quality cars, right? You have your car, you close the door, you have to close it again, and then sometimes you have to lift, you open it, you lift it a little bit, then it opens. And you have those cars that you go to close it, and then on its own, it's just like, you just sealed something. It's perfectly airtight, the sound it makes, right? But they're both cars, and they're both a car door, and they work in the same way, right? They open out so you can get out. They don't open in, It's not like, how you say, Anglo-Saxon toilets, It's impossible. You get in there, and then you want to close the door, and you got to stand on the toilet to close the door, right? While the superior, continental European toilet doors open out. So you open out, and then you have this big spacious place where you can just walk in and then close the door, right? So here in the material world, you still have gradations. But it's not that the principle is the same. So children will always act the same. That's how you know they're children, right? That's how you know. And so when the age and these activities match, then, that's childhood. When the guy's older and he does this, then it's a bit annoying. But, hey, that's married life, So the whole idea is that, right. So the whole idea is that it's not going to be different. But we see is when Krishna does it, it's only to increase rasa, right? But when it's done in the material world, it's self-centered. It's about yourself. And those who are a little better at it then know how to, use the rasa still for their own purpose. You know, they may lie, they may this, and when they see it's really not going well, then they pull out the big, cute smile and, you know, all that kind of thing, or the crying, and, you know. And sometimes, you know, a few times you go for it, but after a while they kind of, you know, this is not going to work, right? Because you know the motive is different. But in the spiritual world, it's only for rasa. So there's no need to you know, I'm not buying that one, right? Because it's about rasa. So that's why it can go on eternally and be perfect. Well, here it gets old.
Because here it's not for rasa, or it makes.
Here it's for ourselves. While there, he's doing it to please the gopis. And the gopis are doing all these things to be absorbed in Krishna or interact with Krishna. So it's about the interaction between them.
Here if we take the mother beloved here, which is the least adulterated, can we say that it can go on eternally? In a sense of
It means
rasa.
it goes on eternally, but you change bodies for it to go on. But so no, it won't go on eternally. It'll get because it has that underlying aspect. So but the position itself is eternal, because all these things, whatever's in the material world, all these the principles of it are eternal, but the manifestation is temporary. So the primary creation, those principles are always the same in every universe. That's made clear in that pastime in Narad Muni, because he was Narad Muni in the last universe, and then by the arrangement of Brahma, then he became that son of the maidservant. Wasn't it? No. Yeah, no, he became that demigod, the Gandharva, then the son of the maidservant, and then in that lifetime the universe ended. So then when he came back this lifetime, it's the same. Because we see in the description of his past life, all the things he describes when he wandered around, you know, when he grew up as a son of the maidservant, were all the same. Prabhupada makes that point. It's the same creation every time. No change. Every Kali Yuga, they're all the same. So that means 1,000 times in the day of Brahma, there's Kali Yuga. And we think, oh, it's new, it's different. No, it's always the same. You know, just for flavor change, instead of, like you say, instead of the beetles, there'll be the cockroaches or something, you know. But they'll be the same thing. The same combination of modes will make that kind of music, and people will go nuts for it. It's not going to change. So that's the whole thing, is it's always the same thing. Because you have to remember, when you, in a lifetime that you go to hell, you know, you go down to hell, then you come up through the animal species, then you come back to the same position you were in. So unless it's the same, right, you know, unless Colonel Sanders is there, then how are you going to be involved in the sinful activities you were involved in before the sentence you held in the first place? Right? So then again back to Colonel Sanders, then again back to hell, and then after 1,000 times of that, then maybe you go, well, maybe I'm not going to go there. You know, so then it starts to become positive. But otherwise it's the same thing. You know, maybe next time he'll be a general. You know, does that make sense? So that's the whole point, is that it's always the same thing. The modes, there's slight adjustment, but it's always the same thing. Does that make sense? You know, so it doesn't change. You know, it's like you have the big formal ball and everything like that, and all the men and women are just worried if someone's going to notice them, someone's going to dance with them, you know, and this and that, and if something does strike up, you know, it's, you know, can they go somewhere else, you know, go out for a walk or this or that, you know, and then in the more contemporary one, it'll be a disco and this and that, and then when they find somebody, then, you know, yeah, you want to get out of here, you know, so it's the same thing. It just is just a lower class, higher class, so they're all going on. So that's the whole point. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Right? So in that way, it doesn't get old, but because we change bodies, so therefore we start over again. New parents, so now, you know, great, you know, like that. You know. But that principle is there, but they're all based on how they'll move, how they'll walk, and all that will be the same as Krishna, how they'll talk. But the point is Krishna will do it perfectly because it's for pleasing. And the living entity, according to his karma, and that it'll be the better quality or lesser quality. It'll be more pleasing, less pleasing, this kind of thing. But it will still always be material. It'll never be spiritual. Therefore, if you take that and now see Krishna in connection with it, now it becomes perfect. So why are those aspects attractive when the child does those things? Because when Krishna does them, that's why they're attractive. Right? So at all points you can become, it's not that the child becomes Krishna. We're not talking, Hinduism here. We're talking, that it reminds you of Krishna. Right? Does that make sense? So that's the whole point. Is then we're able to, so all these things are so nicely able to be engaged in Krishna's service because that's what Krishna does. So all those things can remind you of Krishna. Right? Krishna goes to work in the morning. So they can remind you of Krishna. Krishna comes home in the evening, how he deals. He comes back from a journey, how he deals. So all these things can remind you of, because that's the way things are supposed to be done. The difference is in the spiritual world, they'll do all those things in connection with Krishna, and here we do them for our own benefit. Right? So this whole idea is that as Kali Yuga works differently. No, it's still exactly the same. Just the quality's less. Right? The kid is cute, but not as cute. You know what I'm saying? In other words, all kids are cute, but the ones that are on the postcards are cuter. Does that make sense? So that's the whole idea. And Krishna is the cutest. Okay.
When you say that Maya in the material world she covers, okay? But now when you see in the spiritual world we have Yoga Maya which is acting, and therefore even though the same pastime is being repeated over and over again, because it is Yoga Maya who covers the devotee, that is the reason why we experience the Krishna Sangha.
I almost caught it.
What did she say?
I don't know. That's the problem. One thing is you try it. It's a South Indian tradition. Put your hand in front of your mouth. Then you can open your mouth and make more sound. You know what I'm saying? 'Cause you talk like this with your mouth like this closed and you don't open it and everything like that. Just hold much. And so it's very hard to hear. You have to open the mouth and put some pressure on the stomach. We're not expecting, Greek theater amount of loudness, but at least enough that, because I can't hear, no one else can hear. Or you have to do it slowly and then I try to repeat it. One or the other. To see if we've got it right.
We have Maya.
We have Maya, okay. No, but the point is you have to then always be this loud. But then you'll start off and then go quiet again.
So we have Maya in the material world which covers.
Okay.
Now we have Yoga Maya which functions in the spiritual world.
Yes.
Therefore, whenever there is an interaction between devotees and Krishna,
Right.
The devotees experience the ever freshness in the rasa.
Yes.
Because Yoga Maya covers them, because of which they experience. Is it correct understanding?
Because Yoga Maya covers them, do they experience? Means Yoga Maya is involved, but the point is Yoga Maya is involved in that the covering is how much covering is required to appreciate just Krishna what aspect of Krishna as a person. Because even in Vaikuntha she has to cover, because if Arjuna is seeing, a more uncovered version of Krishna, in his majesty, he can't function. So if that volume of majesty was shown in Vaikuntha, they wouldn't be able to function either. So there has to be some covering where they can function within majesty and render their service and feel, I can render my service. Because they're jivas. God's unlimited. They're limited. So if you bring it out too much, so that's why Yoga Maya always has to be there. Right? But the point is Krishna as a person is the original position. All these others are just part of his nature. So yes, you can say like that because of that. So then in this way, then this aspect of Yogamaya is also known as Leela. You know what I'm saying? So when you, does that make sense? So you have the aspect of the taste, you have the aspect of the arrangements, you know, the mechanics, the knowledge, the efforts, the results. These are all, you know, that Shilpi controlling. But Krishna's pleasure gained from that will be Hladi. That Radharani does herself. Does that make sense? Yeah. So all the knowledge, the arrangements, situations, the attitudes, the perspectives, the the situations, the particular individuals there, the particular endeavors with what particular mechanics they use, and therefore what particular results are produced. That's all what she deals with. The experience that's dealt with there, that's dealt with by Icha Shakti, that's dealt by Radharani. You understand? She deals with that. Because she's Swarup Shakti, but just as Krishna is everything, but he just takes the mood of Braja Krishna just to enjoy. Therefore he takes just the Icha aspect, and then Balaram takes everything else. So in the same way, Swarup Radharani, she is the Swarup. She is the main feature. And then Yogamaya takes care of everything else because she's Swarup Shakti. You understand? So it's just a matter of which side you're taking, aspect or flavor of the Swarup Shakti. So that aspect, then you have, as we said, the Sambit, the Sambit and Sandhini, or the Kriya and Jnana, right? But then, that then has its shadow, which is the material world. So then the knowledge, mechanics, activities, results, experiences gained in the material world, that's all controlled by Mahamaya. But it's the same things, just in an inferior quality. And the amount of energy put into it's very small. You know, it's like, you know, you have a stadium with light in it, or you have a firefly, you know. So because the firefly is the standard here, we'll go, wow, that's a bright firefly. I haven't seen one of those in a while, you know, like that. Is that okay, so we'll stop here. Om Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhaktividya ki, Jai Nitai Gaura Prema. God.